from a strategy standpoint is that the Browns are going to use training camp in the preseason to see which of these rookies was coachable. Which one, if we got Joe to go, which one can we coach up to get going? Because I didn't think either one before or after the draft, didn't think either one was starting week one. Cam Ward better start week one. When you take a QB number one, he better start week one. So I'm okay with all that, with where they're at with all those things. I'm more confused, I guess, about the fact that we do have 6 quarterbacks on the roster. I don't think you can have 6 by the time we get to week
I mean,
one.
you could, but I don't think it'd be smart to have 6 quarterbacks on the roster.
Yeah, because you're taking away from position players, and where do you want to cut from? We already
Yeah.
have not, you could say one of the worst rosters in all of the NFL, but you have to cut from other places that you need. So I'm like, but one of the things is, this training camp has been kind of unprecedented where you've had 3 out of your 4 that are playing right now injured, and then you have to bring in Tyrone Huntley, to come and help out. And then you got Deshaun Watson, who I'm kind of hoping that, he stays on the pup list. But, you see him every day at training camp in that weight room, working out, looking at the field,
Throwing
looking
the
at.
ball now. He's running. He's making progress in his rehab, and it's a really. I've never seen a quarterback situation like this where like you had all this uncertainty at quarterback. You got this many guys splitting reps. You got guys getting injured. You got to bring guys in, and then it's like, oh wait, we got another guy who we paid $20-30 million fully guaranteed dollars, and he could, feasibly get cleared in a couple of months. Yeah. I mean, I think right now the big question is whether they keep 4. We talked about Joe Flacco's going to play first on Saturday. Dylan's going to play after him. Short's going to play third. And then Tyler Huntley might play depending on just I don't know. Stefanski said he might play, but there's only so many snaps. Like it's tough to find time for 3 guys, and then trying to find snaps for a 4th guy is pretty tough. So I'd be surprised if he played, if at all. But the big question right now is like, what do they do with the quarterbacks and how many do they keep? Because we also haven't really talked about Kenny Pickett, who really hasn't practiced at all in camp because of that hamstring injury, and he's not going to play Saturday. If you listen to what GM Andrew Berry said last month, he said, they would have no problem and he'd be comfortable, and it's a possibility that they keep 4 guys because they view the end of the roster as like developmental spots. So if you're looking at it through like that lens, you could say, okay, well, Shador is definitely a developmental prospect because that's essentially how they've treated him throughout the summer. If you're gonna keep Kenny Pickett as maybe like a veteran backup, remember a couple years back they traded away a quarterback and they let Dorian Thompson Robinson be the backup, and he was not ready to get thrown into that game against the Ravens on very impromptu. I mean, it wasn't his fault, but he just wasn't ready. So if you want to keep Kenny Pickett as a quote unquote veteran backup, then you can look at like your QB 3 and then 4 with Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders as like developmental guys who are just going to be inactive for the first however many weeks of the season. I still think that it'd be kind of weird because again, like this year, I feel like this year, if you're the Browns, is all about evaluating those 2 guys, those 2 young quarterbacks, and seeing if there's anything there that's worth building around. Because you have 2 first-round picks in 2026, and the likelihood is that both of them are going to be fairly high picks. So before investing a top first-round pick into a quarterback and a quarterback class that is supposed to be stronger, like let's see if there is anything worth building around Shador or Dylan, because then you can use those picks to complement them and build around them and maybe trade them and get more picks instead of kind of starting from scratch. Like you have to at some point evaluate these quarterbacks in the games that matter.
I feel like that's what we have to do every year. That's what I loved about the Baker years. I knew who my starter was going to be. It wasn't a thing. Now we're back to it being a thing, but it's a thing for other teams as well. This isn't a unique situation here in Cleveland. When I look at the depth chart, I'm actually pretty happy with our tight end situation. I'm pretty happy with our wide receiver situation. I'm very puzzled by the running back situation. Are there like 6 of them? And are they this guy can catch a pass and, do the bubble screens and catch a pass and run. This guy's your short yardage guy. This guy, like, are they going to set them up for different situational plays? Or like is Jerome Ford, going after the starting job to do all the carries? Is he battling against Quinshon Judson? Or You got Pierre Strong, you got Jones, like you got all these guys. Are they going to have like a rotation? Any thoughts on what you've seen so far on what they're going to do at running back?
Yeah, well, I think that the Quinshawn Junkins situation like really threw a wrench into their plans. 'Cause I think ideally it would have been like Judkins is maybe that early down. Now I won't say bell cow back. I think that they're gonna share the wealth in that backfield. Maybe like Quinshawn Judkins is like that early down guy, and then Jerome Ford is a really trusted pass catcher, pass blocker. He's your third down guy, and then and then maybe he split some carries with Judkins, and then Dylan Sampson is kind of like your change of pace, more explosive, quicker, smaller back that you can throw in there, and you kind of like split those reps in the backfield, as you see fit based off matchup and maybe who's got the high hand. But with Judkins not being around, you're kind of back to like a backfield that really just doesn't have like a ton of juice. Like, yeah, I mean, Jerome Ford is like a big play. Like he has a big play threat, but like down to down, he doesn't maybe always give you everything that you need between the tackles. So yeah, it's kind of a tough spot there, and there is no resolution right now to Junkins in terms of like him signing a deal with the team and returning. Obviously the legal situation that he was dealing with has been resolved, but the NFL is still investigating that matter, and right now he remains unsigned, so he can't practice or be with the team. So yeah, you do have a backfield that's a little up in the air, lacks a little bit of depth, lacks a little bit of firepower right now, and that's really not a good sign right now for an offense that's trying to get back to that quote unquote Kevin Stefanski scheme and wants to run the ball a lot more and a lot better than they did last year.
Yeah. You like Ethan Posick at center?
I do.
Is he all right? Is he healthy? Does he know what he's doing? Is he ready to go?
He's a vet. He's played a lot of games. He holds it down. He does his job, and he's serviceable. I mean, it's an aging offensive line. It's an experienced but an aging offensive line. There's only one projected starter that's under the age of 30, and that's DeJuan Jones, and he's coming off a leg injury, and he's adjusting to a new position at left tackle. So for all the talk about them going back to like the Stefanski scheme and doing a lot of stuff that they did a couple years back when they made the playoffs, the players are older. Like the offensive line was kind of like the engine of that offense, and along with Nick Chubb, who's obviously not here anymore, but those guys are older. Those guys have dealt with some injuries. So there's still a lot of very fair questions about whether that offensive line is going to be able to produce the way they've done in years past, both in run blocking and pass protection.
Yeah, because that's one of the things too, is that I feel as if I don't, I have a conundrum because everybody's worried about what's going to happen, who we drafted next season as quarterback. But you have a lot of places in which you have, spots that you need to fill. One of these things is the offensive line, because everybody's aging and people can only play for so long. But my thing is, why are we not developing the talent that we have at quarterback? Everybody's talking about Arch Manning, and we'll have a good opportunity to see Arch Manning next week against a professional college football team, the Ohio State University. So lots of times I judge players and quarterbacks and stuff like that against how they do against Ohio State. So we'll get a preview, and if he doesn't do well against Ohio State, I'm like, what you want him for? Because that's pretty much the gold standard in college football. Why are we not, if you believe that Dylan is so great and better than Shedeur, why are we not focused on developing him? Why are we not focused on developing Shedeur and developing what you have? Because one of the problems that we also need to solve too is special teams. We haven't had great special teams since Josh Cribbs was played for Cleveland. You know who that is, right?
Of course I do.
Yeah. So I'm like, that's a little bit before your time, Daniel.
No. I grew up in Baltimore. I watched a lot of Ravens Browns games. I saw Cribbs take it to the crib a lot of times against the Ravens. I'm very familiar with his game.
But we all know that special teams are important when it comes to field position and things like that. And that doesn't seem like it's been a focus. Like, you got Bubba Ventrone, great. But what has he really done in order for this team to gain ground and not, take the ball out at the 20, 30 and have better field position? I'm still kind of wondering what are they doing in those aspects, because special teams are important, and you have an offense that they struggle to score, and they could be in better field position, but we don't have that opportunity because we don't have great special teams.
Yeah, I'll say as a whole, I'll start with the quarterback spot, and just really, I'll really start at the team as a whole. Like I think that, this team a couple years back with Baker Mayfield, and especially when like the early years of like the Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry regime, like that was a veteran team that they believed was like ready to win right now, and they made a lot of moves to win now. Like when you add a OVJ and you add an Amari Cooper and you add the different guys that they've added through trade, like those were moves that reflected a franchise that was ready to win now. And then obviously the biggest move was them, trading for Deshaun Watson and trading all those first round picks and giving him that huge, fully guaranteed, unprecedented deal. And then you're kind of seeing like the repercussions of that, where all right, well, you've invested so much and you've traded away so many picks. So like you don't have those young players coming up the pipeline, and your roster does get a little bit older, and then the production does decline. And then you're in a spot where like, okay, well, you don't have production, and then you don't have young guys who can kind of step in to fill those roles. And I think that this is like the first year where they've really been able to infuse the roster of talent. Like you look at all the guys that they added on offense, whether it's Judkins, Dylan Sampson, Harold Finn, and then on defense with Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger. Like this is the first year in a couple of years that they've had like a full allotment of draft picks and really been able to bring young talent into this team. So I think that we've talked about this kind of being like a transition pivot year. Like I agree with that wholeheartedly. That this is a bit of a pivot year where they're starting to play a lot more young guys that are going to be the foundation of this team for years to come. And at the quarterback position, I think that they are invested. I think the coaching staff, the front office is invested in developing these guys and developing them at the right pace and putting them out there when they're ready to be played. But we also know that like sometimes timelines can change in the NFL. So like if there is another 3-4 win season and they're in a position to get a highly touted quarterback prospect, like hey, I mean. Sometimes that's how life works in the NFL. Like these rookies, maybe these rookies don't get a ton of burn on the field this year, but if they're in a position to get a guy who they think can be better than all of them, they're going to do that, and timelines are going to change. So I think right now they're very invested. Like they're obviously like they're scouting 2026. They're going to be at all these games and watching all these quarterbacks, but in Berea, like they're going to be developing these guys, continuing to work and make sure that these guys are ready to play, and that when they go out there and play, they play well.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that they dogging Shador. He's America's quarterback.
He's the people's champ. I like
Yeah.
Shador. I will say that I was a little bit. This is what I say. I think the construction of the quarterback room was wonky, and I think that's lent itself to way more problems than like the Browns should have been dealing with. I am like very adamant that. So again, I'll take you back to the owners' meetings in Palm Beach back in what was that? Probably late March or something like that, when Andrew Berry said that the quarterback room is gonna skew young. And he said, yeah, like we're gonna rebuild this quarterback room and it's gonna skew young, and that led me to believe that they're gonna bring in like two young quarterbacks. Whether it's gonna be like maybe like you sign like a Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold or somebody like that, and then you bring in a rookie quarterback. And once they brought in Kenny, and I think at that time they had already brought in Kenny because I was after free agency, so they'd already brought in Kenny Pickett, and at that time, like I think that there should have only been one rookie quarterback added. At that point, like when you draft Dylan Gabriel, I know the thinking. I know that it was like, hey, this guy is way more talented than a 5th round pick. But when it comes to like roster construction, development, and the room and allotment of resources, like 2 rookie quarterbacks is just way too much when you already brought in another semi-young quarterback that you need to work with and develop. Like Flacco was fine. I have no problem with Flacco. I think that was a great move as a guy who can hold down the fort for half the season until the young guys are ready to play. But like now you have 3 youngish quarterbacks who you have to develop, who you have to get reps. And like every day I'm at practice and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like one day Kenny's not getting any first team reps, and then the other day like Flacco's getting all the first team reps, and then one day like Shador's not getting any reps, and then one day like
he hasn't gotten any first team reps.
Well, yeah. But I mean like there'd be like a fluctuation of the practice reps every day because they were like trying to squeeze. Essentially, they were trying to squeeze like 3 quarterbacks, really 2, because like truthfully, at a normal training camp, at a training camp for a team that has an established quarterback, starting quarterback, and established backup, there's only 2 quarterbacks that take a lot of reps. Like last year, when I was here last year, it was Deshaun and Jameis who took like 95% of the reps, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson got a little bit of practice reps, and then he played in the preseason games. So normally you're really only getting like 2 guys practice reps. So really the Browns were trying to stuff like 2/3 quarterbacks worth of practice reps into 4 guys, and I think that it kind of like just did all the guys this injustice. I know that they wouldn't say that publicly. They're like, oh, there's enough reps to go around, but like the first week of camp, they were throwing like 7 passes of practice. Like you can't get into a groove throwing 7 passes of practice, which is why I say like it's unfortunate that Kenny got hurt and he wasn't able to really compete in this competition. But as soon as he got hurt, like we saw like a normal kind of rationing of the practice reps, and it was like, okay, this makes sense. Like these guys are like getting like enough practice snaps where they can get into a groove. So I just didn't like the construction of the quarterback room to begin with, because I felt like it was just too many young quarterbacks that you have to devote time, effort, and practice resources to. When like it's just not gonna. I just didn't think that it was like in the best interest of all those guys of in the team. But you know, with Kenny being hurt, it really allowed Flacco to like take pretty much all the first team reps, and then you kind of develop Dylan and Shador as like QB 2 and 3. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do like during the season in terms of who's the backup and how they're running that. Because you know, once you get to the regular season, all the starters are taking all the practice reps anyway. So it really doesn't matter like what QB2, QB3 is doing, but it's important, like, and it's very notable who QB2 and QB3 is.
So I love Kenny Pickett. I loved signing Kenny Pickett. The thing I love about that is he does not need developed, and he is in no way, shape, or form a franchise quarterback. If Mike Tomlin couldn't turn him into a franchise quarterback, it can't be done. But he's the perfect backup for Joe Flacco. He's got experience. He's had a bad offensive line, so he knows how to protect the ball, and he knows the AFC North. I love having Joe and Kenny there. I wish we only had one quarterback. If they were going to, in their minds, at any point go after Shador, I wish they'd have taken Travis Hunter at 2, because I think we would have seen a very different Shador in training camp if he had his whoopee, if he had his boy there.
Well, I don't know if Shador would have been throwing to Travis Hunter if they drafted Travis Hunter. If Travis would have been with the starters, and Shador ain't practicing with the starters.
He'd be intercepting him. But Dylan and Rachel, you may not like Oregon, but Dylan saw defenses in college that are a lot closer to what the pro defenses are, playing in the Big Ten and playing some of the SEC teams and stuff that he had to play, than Shador saw at Colorado. He didn't see as many really good defenses. I don't know how much either of them can be developed, but I think you're right. There's developmental issues. I miss DTR. I bought a jersey. I love DTR. I wish he could have sat a little more. We rushed these guys in too much, which again is why I like having Kenny Pickett here. We do not need to rush Shador or Dylan in until maybe week 10. Maybe week 10, if we are out of the division race and we don't, because ultimately they're going to want people to buy tickets at that new stadium. So I either got to win games or I got to have a quarterback that people can get behind. And so maybe week 10 is when you go, all right, let's let the young guy in and let's see what he's got. And you give him some time. He's got 6-7 weeks to show us if they've got to have some kind of plan to develop the two of them.
I agree. But, it's funny because I asked Andrew Berry about that when he spoke to the media late last month. And I'm like, a lot of fans, I told him, like, a lot of fans just want you to, like, say, forget these vets and throw the rookies out there because you got to see what you got. And he was like, I understand it. And he was like, there is sometimes maybe some tension with, like, the present versus the future. Like, all right, you want to win right now, but you also have to see what you have for the future. My thing with Kenny being there and then keeping Kenny as the backup is, like, that's a long runway to get to the rookies. And like the way that the Browns are talking about him, they don't view him as just a backup. They view him as a starter and a guy who can be a much effective starter than he was in Pittsburgh. Like Kenny was getting a lot of first team reps, and if Kenny didn't get hurt, he was going to be getting a lot of first team reps. Like I'm not so certain that Kenny's not named the week 1 starter if he doesn't get hurt. Now I think that Flacco is better than
I don't
Kenny.
disagree. I don't disagree.
this
I don't
coaching
know where
staff
his
believes
ceiling is.
they
I
believe
feel
that his
like
ceiling
he
is a
hit the
lot
ceiling.
higher. They believe his ceiling is a lot higher than we saw in Pittsburgh. So my thing is like if Kenny's still around, that's a long runway to get to the rookies to maybe play a couple games. And you got 2 rookie quarterbacks that you got to see at some point. Like you're gonna get a little bit of Flacco. How long does he get the leash to play? You're gonna get some Kenny Pickett. How long is his leash? And then finally you get to the 3rd QB. Like we didn't get to QB3 last year until like we got to DTR around like week 13 or 14 or so. We started 2 games and then they put Bailey Zappi in there. So
we had injury on injury. So
yeah, but it just feels like a lot of guys. I mean, obviously, I have no problem with them starting Joe week 1. I think that's the right move to make. But I'm saying like when you put Kenny in there, and now like he's the first option if things go wrong with Joe. It just seems like a real long runway to eventually get to see if these rookie quarterbacks can do anything.
True, but so here philosophically for me, there's always that winning fixes everything, right? It's a 53-man roster. That quarterback is one. There are 52 other men on that team that need to win games, that need to play well. That defense, that offense needs to score. Joe Flacco can score, so my defense isn't so tired in the 4th quarter. They look like crap. I want Myles Garrett to stay. He signed an extension. How many other people do I have that are coming up on contract years? I don't want them bolting because we went 2-15 because we're trying to figure out our quarterback. Like you still need to win games because you got 52 other men on that field that have pride and talent, and they only have so many years to play, right? Especially running backs. I don't know how many more years Jerome Ford has in him. You've got a lot of guys on that field that are in their last couple years of playing, and I don't want the good ones leaving because we won 3 games again. Like you need to win something early with Joe Flacco to get the team motivated. You know what I mean?
I agree. And I think that's why I said like, I have no problem putting Joe out there week 1 because I think that he's the best option. And I think that especially with like they have the toughest 6-game start to the season. Every single team that they play in the first 6 weeks of the season had a winning record. So I have no problem with putting Joe out there. But I'd say that the Browns would be better off winning 5 games and knowing that Dylan Gabriel and Shador is like their future or is worth building around than winning 7 or 8 games with Joe Flacco. And then Joe's like not going to be around here for the long haul, and you still don't know what you have. So that's why I say like
maybe week 10's too late. All right, week 8.
I mean, if you had one rookie, if you had one rookie, I'd say that's fine. One rookie, I'm fine. Let him take over week 10, play the last 7, 8 games. But I'm like, you got 2 rookies that at some point you got to see this year. That's my game.
Daniel, what's your season prediction? How many wins are you anticipating the Cleveland Browns to have? Because me and Kate, we played the schedule game and we came up with 6 to 7 wins.
Okay. I'm on the same page with you guys. I'm thinking like a 6-11 season. I don't think that they're going to be as bad as some people think. I think that with Flacco in there, and especially if he plays like the first half of the year, I think that there are some games that they can win. I think that they're going to be a fairly competent offense. Like the bar from last year is pretty low, and I think that they're going to exceed that. I think that they're going to be like a lot better on a week-to-week basis, game-to-game basis. But I do have some just overall questions about like, the kind of like the firepower on offense, obviously the quarterback situation, and just them not having the high-level talent and depth to not only like hold up against the best teams in the NFL, but like withstand injuries. Like this team is a couple injuries away from like some key spots from really being decimated and not having. I mean, we already saw Martin Emerson go down at cornerback, and they're gonna need some young guys to step up as well. But I'm thinking like 6-11, and maybe that can change depending on if we see one of these rookies a little bit earlier than we anticipate, and they kind of overperform.
Well, 6-11 ain't gonna get you Arch Manning.
You don't want Arch Manning. Stop.
I don't even know if Arch is going to be around next year. Everybody's saying he's not going to be here next year. So everybody's saying he's staying in Texas. So I don't know. Maybe you get Drew Aller or one of these guys.
I don't want Drew Aller either. His games against Ohio State, he has lost Ohio State.
You're Archer bust. That's what your Archer bust.
I want Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. That's who I'm going to keep an eye on this year. That's who I like. Rachel, can we talk fantasy football for a minute?
Yeah, we can talk fantasy football.
I have 2 leagues this year instead of 5. One is a league with a whole bunch of Cleveland people, and one is a league with a whole bunch of people from all over the country. I'm predicting not a single Brown will go in my other league. Maybe Myles Garrett, because we do have an IDP position for but, and I'm sure in the Cleveland League, we're all homers, we'll all take somebody. Are there any players that you would take in like the first 3-4 rounds?
I don't know about the first 3 or 4 rounds, but if you're just looking at like fantasy, obviously like you're gonna take a Jerry Jeudy. I think that regardless of who's the quarterback, I think Judy's gonna get a ton of targets in this offense, especially with Flacco starting the first however many games. David Njoku, him and Joe Flacco just have a great connection. David Njoku loves Joe Flacco. Like, he loves Joe Flacco. He was singing to Joe Flacco yesterday as he was walking off the practice field. Like, he loves him. So he's going to get a ton of targets. Harold Fannin, maybe later, maybe a much later around draft pick, but they're going to play a lot of 2 tight end sets. Harold Fannin looked really good in the preseason or in training camp. He's going to get a lot of targets. After that, it gets a little bit dicey. I don't know about the running backs. I don't know about the running back situation. I don't know about like who Cedric Tillman. He's had trouble staying healthy. Maybe like you take a flyer on Isaiah Bond, like really late in your draft. Like they're getting him up to speed. He's going to play on Saturday, and they've been getting him up to speed. We're not allowed to report. They're in regular season mode, so we're not allowed to report what we see about these practices. But they're getting him up to speed, and he's going to play on Saturday.
Was it weird that he announced on social media that he was signing with the Browns like 3 or 4 days before the Browns officially announced that he was signing with them?
It was a little weird.
And he announced it like 20 minutes after we found out Judkins wasn't going to have any charges pressed, and he was clear to come back. And I'm like,
that was insane.
Who is this kid?
That was a wild day. I mean, honestly, that was one of those days where you're like the NFL really is a soap opera, and the Browns are the center of it.
For sure. All right, thank you.
Yeah, Daniel, I know we said 20 minutes. It's been a little bit longer than that.
I didn't even realize it. It was too much fun.
Women can't talk for just 20 minutes, Daniel.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're welcome to stay on, but if you got to go, we definitely appreciate you. How can people get at you? What's your social media links?
Yeah, you can follow me anywhere on social media at Daniel Oyefusi, Oyefusi.
Okay. Thank you so much for being on our show today. Daniel Fusi with Oyefusi, excuse me, with ESPN. So hopefully, you will be dropping by, during the year and talking some Browns with us. But, we're definitely very excited. I'm Team Shador. I don't want Arch Manning. I'm Team Shador, developing him and having him be your quarterback of the future. Dylan can have a seat. You didn't perform well against Ohio State, so that's my barometer.
Oh, you're so judgy, Rachel. You're so judgy.
But Ohio State is a good barometer. They beat what was that guy that played for USC? I forgot who he was.
They had one good game against the Buckeyes and one bad game. That's a whole team effort. He had some line issues. He had all kinds of issues.
This was in a playoff game, not a playoff game, but in a bowl game. But Ohio State just did them dirty. So, I'm rooting for Shador out of all this for the quarterback of the future. But thank you so much for coming on. Make sure that we're up with your social media links and stuff like that. And I won't be there Saturday, but I should be the first game.
Sounds good. I see you there then.
All right. Looking forward to seeing you. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So, Kate, we had Daniel on to talk a little Browns with us. One of the things that, he mentioned about Isaiah Bond too. So that was a great thing. Talking about, I was going to ask, how does he look? But, having Shador and what's his name? I forgot his name already.
Dylan.
Thank you. Shador and Dylan. Thank you. See here, not saying he irrelevant, but but having them play again.
Rachel, you and I survived Baker Mayfield, and one of our biggest complaints about Baker was his height and the fact that the offensive coordinator, who, let's face it, was Kevin Stefanski, did not design plays, did not work with the offensive line on opening up passing lanes for him to see, did not tailor the offense to a short quarterback. Why do we think they're going to do that for Dylan Gabriel? That is my concern with the height, because I've seen this movie before. I also apparently believe in Mike Tomlin more than the Browns do. If the Browns think they can do a better job at developing Kenny Pickett. You and I both watched Kenny Pickett play in Penn. Lost to Ohio State, I might add. So I don't know how much ceiling he has. I love him as a backup. He understands our division. He's a veteran. You let him and Joe go. I stand by week 10. I don't want to see a rookie in there until week 10 because to me that means we've stayed healthy. We don't got any room on the offense side of the ball to get hurt. On defense, we got a little better depth. On defense, we got a couple guys playing that we drafted that are going to start week 1, and that's always good. I'm okay when we talk about special teams. I'm okay with the kicking game, not okay with the punt return game, the kick return game. We need a kick returner. You can make a very good living. Ask Josh Cripps. Ask Devin Hester. You can make a very good living as a kick returner. We need to find one.
Yeah. Dustin Hopkins, hopefully, he can perform better this year than he did last year. So that's one of the things. I don't really have the problem with Dustin Hopkins. Corey Bojorquez, he does his job excellently, but it's the return game. So I should have been more specific with that and not singled out the whole special teams as a whole. But, it's just killing me. We're not having good field position. We're always having the ball at 30, 20, 30 deep in our own territory. And it's just like, how do you expect to win these games? Jim Tressel, who I'm not a fan of anymore since he's running for governor as a Republican, he said special teams was the most important thing of the football game. And you're not getting that with the Cleveland Browns. So you said that if you think that we are going to see one of these rookies, the 10th game, that means it's going to be really bad. And I'm not ready for that yet.
What, to have a rookie in week 10?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be really bad. What I think is the Bengals are going to be a lot better than they were last year. I think Aaron Rodgers is a wild card. I think by week 10, we will have no chance at winning the division. And if you can't win the division, then so for my goals for this year, my number one goal is to win the division, win the AFC North. If on week 10, I can no longer do that because Baltimore's 10-0 and Pittsburgh's 8-2 and Cincinnati's 9-1 and we're 3-6 or whatever we're at, then my second goal for this year is to know who my starting quarterback is going to be next year, which means we need to start playing Shador and Dylan Gabriel. It doesn't necessarily mean we can't still win 6-7 games. It just, to me, it means we're out of the race for the division. Because I don't know, even looking at this roster, even if Joe Flacco does really well, and you and I are completely wrong about the schedule game, and they win 11, 12, 13 games, can this team go up against the Eagles, the Bills, the Chiefs? They can't go deep into the playoffs. If I don't have a shot, if I don't have a shot at the Super Bowl, I need me a draft pick for next year so I can fix whatever problems got me there. So I'm okay with 6 wins. I'm okay with the top 5 draft pick. I'm hoping I don't need a quarterback next year. So that's why I'm thinking by week 10, that's when we need to see a little bit, because that means Flacco and Kenny have been healthy. If I haven't seen Dylan Gabriel until we get to week 10, it means everybody been healthy. I haven't had to prove any of these guys are. Taylor Huntley needs to go. Might as well release him off the roster now. You put Deshaun on the PUP list. That leaves you 4 on the active roster, and you can develop those 2 while these 2 are getting their reps every week to get the starting jobs for the 1 and 2.
Yeah, Stacy's watching right now, and she says Dylan sits in the pocket too long. And then she says that they think that Joe is going to look for them to be a savior for a playoff run. But if Joe could play anywhere, I mean, he went 2-4 with the Colts, but if Joe can play anywhere like he played for us in 2023, that would be amazing. And, one of the things is you don't have Amari Cooper, but you have Jerry Jeudy. If him and Jerry Jeudy can find a special connection, they can have some good offensive rhythm and they're able to stretch the field and not have all their drives fizzle out. So Jerry Jeudy,
going to depend on who he goes after early. He does. Daniel was right. He's got a very good relationship with David Njoku, but that's when Harold Fannin Jr. starts getting yards because defenses are going to key. We have two weapons. We have Jerry Jeudy. We have David Njoku. Defenses are going to key on them. They're going to look at our formation. They're going to be double teaming somebody, which is going to leave your other tight end open. It's going to leave Isaiah Bond open or Cedric Tillman or David Tank, whoever the other receiver is. I think that's where the number two at those two spots is where you're going to see yards, because I think defenses are going to key on them. I don't know how much we're going to be able to run the ball. That offensive line is not young. It's not old, but it's not young. It needs to stay healthy. It's not deep. I don't feel this way about our defense. I'm not worried about the defense. We're not deep enough, and you need a deep offensive line if you're going to try to run the ball, period.
David Njoku.
No.
I'm not a fan.
I know, but
he's so inconsistent.
He can catch a ball. He can catch, and then he can run. So can Harold Fannin. Love me some Harold Fannin. Bowling Green State University.
Oh, did you hear like their record enrollment for freshmen like ever this year?
Yep.
It's like 4,000.
Yeah.
No, 7,000.
7,000. It's crazy.
I was going to say, you know how many would be at Ohio State?
Way more. Stop. Be nice.
I know.
All right.
Baby
we gotta go. What else we got to talk about? I got to go.
In Guardians.
Do I have to?
Please.
Oh, what do you want me to say? I've been to one game.
Well, they've fallen off of a cliff, so they lost their 5 out of the past 6. So the other day against Arizona, they got a great effort from Parker Messick, and then they lost that game into it. Well, the bullpen has been giving us issues, so they lost that game in the 10th inning, and it's just the stats for leaving men on base and stuff like that. It's just awful. And, even Stephen Vogt talked about situational hitting, and they struggled to be able to do that. And you see that now. And right now, Kansas City has leaped over us. So we're not really in contention for the wild card anymore, which completely sucks. But, when you look at your pitching and you look at, losing Emmanuel Clase, and you look at losing, not Oscar Ortiz. What was her name? I got popped for gambling. Dang. I forgot his name just that quick. Ortiz, though, he got popped for gambling, and your bullpen isn't doing that well. So, those are some issues that they're having. But the starting pitching is showing potential, but they're not able to win games or not allow teams to catch up. So, the wild card race is pretty much over.
Yeah, that Miami Marlins series was rough. We talked about it right after that. That game that they lost, what was it, 13-4 or something insane? Came back and won the next night 9-4. Bibby is 9-9. He actually looked at Tyler Bibby looked okay. I don't know what was up with that Atlanta series. They scored 5 runs across 3 games, and they gave up 17. I'm like, you can't. Where's your offense? You have
Jose
no offense.
Juan are slumping a little bit still.
They are, and then I felt better. They get off to a good start against Arizona. We get that win, and then we lose 2. We took one to overtime, to extra innings. Sorry, extra innings. Overtime. Sorry, extra innings. I feel like they're too much in their heads. And that's a general manager thing to me. That's a boat thing. When you start a slide like this, when you've lost 5 out of 6 games, that's where your manager needs to sit you down, talk to you, shake things up, bubblegum on the hat, singing Jose, 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 like something, hats inside out. I don't know. Wedgies, underwear pulled up to your armpits. I don't know what it is. You need to do something, socks inside out. I don't know. You need to do something to shake it up before they settle into a slide. And I feel like they've settled into a slide. And I don't know. I don't know if Vogt can get them out of this, because it's not, to me in baseball, it's not just talent, it's mentally. It's mentally. If you're in a wrong headspace, you're not seeing the ball when it's coming at you. You're not seeing pitches. Your third time seeing a pitcher, you should know exactly what you're going to get. You should be able to anticipate that ball. he's tired, so he's not as tight at hitting the corners of the zone, all that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot going on in their heads.
Yeah, well, this is over, so there'll be no playoff baseball, unfortunately. But it's a tale of two seasons. But he's had some pitchers who were popped for gambling, and Luis Ortiz, the game that they said that he gambled on was his best game of the season against the New York Yankees, which we happen to win. So losing two rocks, one of your rotational people, and then losing one of the best closers in baseball, that doesn't help, because that sets the tone. And Kate Smith has been on and off at times, but it really hasn't been is starting pitching. The Guardians are great at developing pitching, and starting pitching has been great. It's just been the bullpen that has not been great. I like CJ Kathis though, so that was a great call up, and he's having an impact immediately. But unfortunately, Kansas City is above the Guards, so they'll be in contention for. And every game the Guards lose, it just puts them further away from the wild card. So, it was a great season. It was a different season than Stephen Vogt's first season, but you live and you learn from this, and it is what it is. So I'll be down there for the rest of the games, but there's no postseason, and that sucks. But
there's time. There's time. I mean, Kansas City can go on a slide. There are teams in front of us that could easily just start dropping games. So,
But this is when you need to be winning games, and every game matters. Every hit.
I agree.
Pitch. So they're struggling with that. So
I know. So anyway.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being here today.
I got you, sis.
It was a great show. I'm glad we had Daniel on, and so hopefully we can continue to have him on throughout the season to report on the Cleveland Browns for us. So, for your girl Rachel Hill and for Kate Arhar, Cleveland Kate, you've been listening to Her in the Huddle on WOVU 95.9 FM. We are out of here.